Spoiler warning. The following discussion will contain spoilers. We recommend checking out the movie first, then coming back to hang with us. But if you don't care about that, glad to have you here.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Real Review. My name's Kevin.
I'm John.
And we are your real movie guys. It's that time again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Real Terror Month. Real Terror Month is a celebration of all your favorite horror movies. This month, we're going to be taking a look at the Halloween series, and in this episode of The Real Review, we're going to be watching Halloween 2. While Sheriff Brackett and Dr. Loomis hunt for Michael Myers, a traumatized Laurie is rushed to the hospital, and the serial killer is not far behind her. Halloween 2, it's interesting because John Carpenter wanted no part of this movie. John Carpenter, obviously the director of the first installment. He didn't direct this one. We have a new director, Rick Rothenthal. The way this all came about is John Carpenter essentially said, all right, I'll give you guys Halloween 2, but you gotta do me a favor. Him and Deborah Hill actually convinced the studio to let them make The Fog. That was greenlit in exchange for Halloween 2. There's some things to love about Halloween 2, and there's some things to not really love about Halloween 2. I think there's more positives than negative on a whole. The first thing I do like is this is a direct continuation of Halloween 1. I do always appreciate when movies do that, when we get like a sequel that takes place immediately after. Granted, they do change the ending slightly. Michael, instead of falling in the backyard, he falls in the front yard of the house.
What's weird though, I think more to the credit, is that a lot of fans probably wouldn't even notice that, but it's very obvious though.
It's a strange change. Whatever, it happened, it was changed. Not the first time we're going to see this in the series either, where things are slightly changed. I don't think the first Halloween needed a sequel at all. I think that's a perfect movie. It's self-contained. The story works for what it is. This didn't need to exist, and obviously John Carpenter agreed because it took a little bit of enticing to get it to happen. I will say, for what this movie is, it is a great conclusion to the Michael Myers character. It's not a conclusion, spoiler alert, this isn't the end of Michael Myers by a long shot, but for what this movie was intended to be, I think it's a pretty action-packed finale that maybe the rest of the movie there's some hit and misses throughout it, but the end of this movie sticks with you. This is a memorable ending of explosions and craziness that does justice to that Michael Myers Terminator-esque character.
It definitely gives you one hell of an ending.
It's not directed by John Carpenter, which isn't really necessarily a good thing, but Rick Rosenthal, he did a really good job emulating John Carpenter's style. When I watch Halloween 1 and 2 back to back, they feel like they're the same movie. It feels like they live in the same universe. You typically don't get that with directors. Usually a director tries to put their own little spin on a movie, make a few changes here and there. I don't see that with Rosenthal. I think he really wanted to stick to the Carpenter style with some, once again, beautiful first-person cinematography, relying on music, the strong, suspenseful encounters. There's a lot of build-up to when things are going to happen. Besides some story beats that come out of left field, nothing as far as the kills feels overly done. Everything works, I think, in the same tone as the first movie, which, again, very important. One of the big things a lot of people talk about this movie was how it tries to connect itself from Halloween 1. Now, the big twist, for those who are unaware, Jamie Lee Curtis, who plays Laurie Strode, is actually the sister of Michael Myers, and it's terribly revealed throughout the movie. They have some weird flashbacks, which I think they're hilarious. Her and her stepmother are in the garden doing laundry, and she's like, "You're not even my real daughter." How did you forget that? Like, what the like, that's just like a random thing to come up. I just think it's hilarious. Towards the end of the movie, there's a Loomis and the other doctor are talking, and she reveals, "We found the secret file that was hidden under the cabinet that no one knew about, that Michael Myers had a sister, Laurie." And it's like this big reveal. It's really out of left field. I think the strengths of Halloween 1 was really this: he had no motive. He was just being a killer for the sake of it. But I guess in order to continue the chase, Michael wanting to kill Laurie Strode so bad, I guess they needed to make them brother and sister. That's going to have repercussions for the rest of this series, which are very interesting. This movie in particular, if we're just looking at 1 and 2 together, I think it works. Is it the strongest thing? Not necessarily, but I think it works overall.
I think that was really weird. And that's the other part with this movie. Again, there's so many horror movies too. I so much want there to be a good horror movie where the first one's good, say, and then they continue it on and make that one so good too. But it always seems like they always put these things in where they don't make sense or they try too hard. There's so much of this movie that they could have been able to explain it better, but they also too just use Laurie almost the whole movie. She spends time in a bed.
I think that's one of the biggest negatives of this movie. Laurie's bedridden throughout the whole movie until the last fourth. She kind of shows up a little bit and starts doing doing some stuff when Michael's actually in the hospital chasing after her. Such wasted potential. But when you have your main heroine who you spent all this time developing in the first movie and you choose to put her in a bed the entire time, that seems like a really big missed opportunity to me.
You're trying to build up a character and then you smash them down. And then you're at the end, you're like, oh, we got to build up his sister again, like make the ending even better.
Right.
And it's almost like
there's a weird pacing issue, I think, throughout this whole movie. I find myself sitting in the beginning of this movie. I was really bored. Nothing was happening in the beginning. And, the first one is slow. Of course, there's a lot of pacing, but it feels like it's to an end. Michael's lurking. He's trying to build up what he's going to do in his mind. This movie is just boring. Nothing is happening until you actually get to the hospital. It's not halfway through. I don't want to be that dramatic. We finally enter the hospital and we start seeing all the different characters there. That's when it finally gets interesting. Once Michael gets there and he starts doing his shenanigans, that's when this movie became alive to me. But before that, there's really nothing going on, except for one thing. Rest in peace, Ben Tramer. Who's Ben Tramer, you ask? He was the love interest of Laurie Strode in the first Halloween movie. The Halloween series is very famous for this. They like to bring back characters in a weird way. Ben Tramer is the boy that's trying to go out with Laurie. Her friend was trying to set her up on a date in the first movie.
Oh, yeah.
So in this movie, there's a man who's dressed up like Michael Myers and he's walking in the street. Loomis starts bugging out and a car smashes into this man and explodes and ignites in a giant ball of flames, and people are kind of upset, not upset about a young man just getting killed. That was actually the Ben Tramer character that was mentioned in the first movie. You would have missed it if you weren't paying attention. Talk about out of left field. The exploding car out of nowhere, I think, left more of an impression on me than the actual twist of Laurie being Michael's sister. I just couldn't get over that when that happened. It's like I love it and hate it at the same time. But what I do love, Loomis. Now, Donald Pleasance was more reserved in the first movie, and I kind of hinted at that, something was coming. Donald Pleasance, he lets the chain off a little bit. We're not full-blown crazy man yet. He's getting pretty close. He has some wild-eye things. Even at the end of this movie, Loomis has one of the best scenes. Him versus Michael is what I want. Give me that battle right there. He's about to take out Michael at the end of the film. That's a beautiful, poetic battle. He's slightly chewing the scenery. He's like, they want schlock? I'm going to give him schlock. And it works. It makes me buy into the mythology just that little bit more.
And that's one thing I think a lot of horror movies miss out on, is another good character in the movie that can work very well with the villain and not overtake him, but also they work together as a cohesive unit.
It's interesting because Loomis, I feel like, is important, but he's also a danger to the situation whenever he shows up. He has the best intentions, but things tend to go south really quick.
So he's like aiming his gun at like the trick-or-treaters that are wearing Michael mask, and it's like, whoa, 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 we're just playing a joke, and he's all on edge and everything.
Yeah, Loomis hates kids. We even talk about it in the first movie. He scared a bunch of little trick-or-treaters. He's ready to wave his gun at anybody. He's not even a cop. He gets away with so many violations. Now, there's a lot of things that I think add to why this movie isn't as successful as I think it should be. There's a 3-year gap between this movie and the last one. Why is that so important? A lot of movies came out between Halloween and Halloween 2, including some we've even reviewed on this channel. My Bloody Valentine is a famous one that we loved, and we took a look at that film. So when this came out, they couldn't stick to the style that they wanted. I think they had to emulate what was more common and modern for what they ironically created in the first place. In this movie, we see everything kind of amped up, which, again, I complimented the first film for being so subtle with a lot of its workings, with a lot of its killing, a lot of its gore, even sexuality for the most part was more subtle. This movie's like, no, we got to turn everything up because that's what the people want now. Halloween, feeling the echoes even in its own series, for better or worse, it created this new genre, which I think Halloween 2 is more reflective of what we have today as far as modern horror, where they're more just throw it at the screen and see what sticks, no matter how violent or sexual it is.
So far with the Halloween movies, it's not like provocative nudity just for the sake of throwing it in there. Like, how when we reviewed Jason and stuff, and people were just running around topless for no reason and everything like that. This movie hasn't had that yet. You don't per se need that to tell a good story, and that doesn't enhance the story.
I mean, this movie, I think there's more of a story than typically there would be. At least they're trying to get a story regardless of how the output is. I think there's something trying to happen here. The unfortunate part is Halloween's falling into what it created. It's becoming too formulaic. You compare it to the first Halloween, which was so groundbreaking in what it did. Kind of just said, let's coast on it. It kind of worked. We'll just tune it up a little bit. I think one of the other things this movie cements, which is a terrible horror trope that we're going to see for years to come, horror stupidity is a thing. Briefly, you even touched on it in our first review when we talked about how stupid the people were acting. Give it a little bit of leeway with Laurie. She's a little on edge. Sure, whatever, we let it pass. This movie, absolutely not. There's so many situations where just not doing that would have resulted in the movie being totally different. I feel like there's only so much you can give as far as believability in a horror movie. One of my favorite scenes of this actually happening is when Michael gets shot in the hospital and he's on the ground laying there flat, and then one of the police officers that's with Loomis and all them, goes over to check on him, and Loomis is like, no, get away from him. Don't look at him. Don't touch him. And then Mike just grabs him and slits his throat. Could have been avoided. Obviously, some shit like that was going to happen. This man is obviously a monster. You saw him previously, which is also incredibly stupid, but I'll let it go a little bit. He walks through a glass door. Like, there's no pressure. He didn't kick it. He just walked through it, which physics I don't think work that way. I don't know. I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments below. And I think, unfortunately, just horror stupidity really starts to creep in, and I think we're going to see that down the line even more. The first movie was clever. You know, it had a little bit of it. It had to have some sense of disbelief to an extent. This movie kind of is like, we're just going to be stupid. Let it go into our situation that we want. Now, the good thing about the horror being turned up is there are a lot of kills in this movie, which brings us to me and John's favorite segment, the Real Kill Award. The Real Kill Award is a special award that we grant to the kill of the movie. John, for this movie, what would you like to grant the Real Kill Award?
Well, for this one, there's Karen getting drowned in the hot tub. Slowly her face starts melting off, slow burning death. An interesting way to take her out, like he just turns up the hot tub.
It's gruesome, it's gory. I think it encapsulates everything we kind of like, especially for me, being a guy who likes the practical effects. That was a little special. Her skin kind of peeling off her body. Poor Nurse Karen, she really got it in this movie, and I think that's definitely one of the standout kills of this movie. My Real Kill Award I'd like to grant for this movie is Michael Myers himself. Loomis and Laurie are fighting Michael. The fight is really cool. Michael is trying to kill Laurie, and you see Loomis is to the side. You hear gas running, which again, another great use of sound that we see carried over from the first movie. It's light, it's not that powerful. Laurie grabs the gun and shoots Michael in the eyes for an amazingly beautiful shot where you see blood running down from Michael's eyes, like he's crying blood. You just hear the knife. He's like trying to swat at her. Loomis starts turning on the gas, and so does she. He's like, get out of here, Laurie, run. And then he just goes, it's time, Michael. He lights a match and everything explodes, killing presumably Loomis and Michael in this giant ball of flames flying out from this room. Laurie's looking on. Suddenly you see Michael's body walking out of the fire until he collapses. That's an iconic visual, in my opinion, for a horror movie. And the interesting part about this, that fire stunt is practical. The stuntman that was doing that was actually severely burned on his arms from the metal zippers that were on the suit because the flames were so hot. The heat actually burned him from that scene. So he's permanently scarred by that. I'm not saying that we should all go do that. Please don't go burn yourself alive in any kind of stunt. But there's such a practicality to it that it really does exist timelessly, in my opinion. Now, there are some other kills. You know, we're not going to get too much into them. Another one that I actually liked was Dr. Mixter. He gets stabbed in the eye with a syringe. And the nurse that comes in to check on him, Nurse Janet, she gets snuck up behind by Michael Myers and he stabs her in the side of the head. I guess he injects like an air bubble into her cranium and she just collapses and dies. That was pretty horrific. I thought that was a good standout one. I think we're at that point. We're going to give you our final scores. I'm going to give Halloween 2 a B-.
It's time, Michael.
Not the worst in the series. I think it's definitely a downgrade from the first film. What it does right, it does pretty well. For us gore hounds out there, there were a lot of kills, a lot of enjoyment to be had. The story, they tied it together. They did their best. An interesting story, maybe not fully developed to the point where it's going to make sense later down the line, but I don't think they were thinking that far ahead. If this was the end of Michael Myers, I don't think I would have had a problem with it. Halloween 2 can stand on its own 2 feet, and it definitely leads to the question when we get down the road that maybe this should have been the end. John, where do you stand with this film?
I give this one a C. I feel like it was an average movie. It wasn't one of the worst ones I've seen. And definitely won't be one of the worst ones that we see throughout this whole month. It had some good things and it had some bad things, and some of the bad things just seemed like overwhelmed the good things overall.
Halloween 2 is a good bookend to the series, the story of Michael Myers. Halloween 3 is going to be really interesting, so I hope you guys don't miss that. We'll catch you next time. Real Terror Month continues on.
If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, we should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.